MindMap Communications. What's up, Faisal? How are you?
Hey, Faizan, how are you doing? Good, yeah, but struggling through the COVID crisis like everybody else, I guess.
I'm sure I'm probably wondering कि you have the most headlines to play with right now. Your mind must be going crazy on what to write about, given what where the world is. I mean, today a friend of mine in Mumbai messages and says there is a rain thunderstorm coming in Mumbai and it's probably going to flatten the city. मैंने कहा चलो जी, that's all we needed right now.
By the way, the thunderstorm really damaged the Taj Mahal
It did.
yesterday. Yeah, it damaged the Taj Mahal, the skirting below the domes, it damaged that, and it damaged stuff in the courtyard as well.
तो यार क्या हो रहा है फैसल, मतलब दुनिया में हमारे साथ क्या हो रहा है, मतलब कहाँ पे हम फोकस करें? ये दिस इज लाइक अ पीआर नाइटमेयर यार.
I'm no stranger to a PR nightmare. Let me tell you that, because the world is going through a very different phase right now. I think all of us need to realize that this is not going away. This is the new normal. Now, in order to deal with something which is the new normal, where there is no cure and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, there's hardly any way to plan for something. And then
Right.
the back of this, the brands that we manage as a company, as a digital media and a PR company, and you guys manage big brands as well. So you know that it's very, very difficult to sort of get our heads wrapped around क्या बोलें, किस तरह बोलें, क्या चीज़ insensitive नहीं लगती, क्या चीज़ sensitive है, उसके बारे में नहीं बात करें. And the worst problem in Pakistan right now is that everything's sensitive.
That's true.
एक चीज पे जो है वो उस्मा खान हुमा खान को गालियां पड़ती हैं और अगले दिन दूसरी चीज पे जो है किसी और को गालियां पड़ती हैं एंड द न्यूज साइकिल जस्ट कीप्स ऑन गोइंग. अच्छा, बाय द वे, दिस इज नॉट न्यू टू पाकिस्तान. सिंस 2011 से हम लोग कर रहे हैं डिजिटल मीडिया एंड वी हैव स्टार्टेड डूइंग पीआर अबाउट 3 years ago. तो ये पाकिस्तान का एक स्पेशलिटी है कि वी हैव सो मच शिट गोइंग डाउन इन दिस कंट्री that the news just can't keep up. दूसरे मुल्कों में है ना,
अमेरिका हमारे इस क्रैप से अमेरिका इतना इंस्पायर हुआ है कि अमेरिका ने कहा नहीं यार, हम तो हर चीज में नंबर 1 है, और इस हफ्ते अमेरिका ने कहा कि यार देखो हम भी पाकिस्तान की तरह हो सकते हैं.
हाँ, तो बेसिकली they tried to turn New York into Karachi in the 90s.
That's true.
आगे लगा दी उन्होंने और पुलिस की गाड़ियां चला दी and all of that. But यार, American crisis has been simmering for a while. क्राइसिस मैनेजमेंट में कॉम्स में हमेशा बात होती है कि डोंट लेट थिंग्स सिमर, एंड दैट हैज बीन अ प्रॉब्लम विद द यूएस विद द अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन थिंग फॉर अ व्हाइल नाउ. ठीक है ना, इट्स बीन सिमरिंग अंडर द सरफेस, देयर हैज बीन रिपीटेड किलिंग्स, एंड बस वो एक दिन अब वो पॉइंट आ गया था कि वो लावा फट गया है, एंड नाउ दे आर फाइंडिंग इट वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू कंट्रोल. इनफैक्ट I wrote a status a few days ago on this, which is quite ironic because I saw a video in which American troops were moving down a street in Minneapolis and वो पूरी बख्तरगंज गाड़ियां थी and आगे आर्मी के जवान चल रहे थे उनके, and they saw a white woman on a porch. So they first yelled at her through a megaphone, "Ma'am, get back in the house. Ma'am, get back in the house." And then the third yell from the troop battalion was, "Light him up."
Wow, that's crazy.
And then they started firing rubber bullets at her. Now, what the ironic thing is, light him up is a very, जिसको कहते हैं iconic and deadly phrase that they used to use when the ships used to rain down death on Iraqis. वो कहते थे light them up. So that's what's happening.
It's a phrase from way back when the KKK was very active. And there was a lot of lynchings that used to happen in the US. You've lived in the US, I've lived in the US. I mean, we've heard about these stories and they were in our parents' lifetime. That's unbelievable, yaar.
But now, in the recent past, it's a phrase that was used in their wars when they used to rain down death. तो अब ये हो रहा है अमेरिका के साथ.
लेकिन इसमें एक बात बताओ यार, keeping that in mind, obviously that's a little distant from us, but just out of curiosity, if you were managing a brand in the US right now and your brand had an African American CEO, how would you manage through this crisis? What advice would you give that CEO? Should he speak up at this point in time? The CEO of, let's say, a Fortune 500 company is African American. Should they be speaking up? And what should they be saying?
Yeah, I think the first thing that needs to be realized in this context is that, you see, everybody has a voice. and the voice is really important. Now, whether that voice is used as a brand and whether as a person is a different thing, right? So if they want to use their voice individually, yes, they can speak up. But in order for the brand to take a position on that, then you have to see the history of the brand, whether they've taken that position before, do they want to take this position now, stuff like that. So these
If it
things
was
need
a
to be.
brand like Walmart, let's just pick a random brand that appeals to the masses of America. Every single American shops at Walmart. What would Walmart do in a situation like this? Should it
I
take
think
a
Walmart. Okay, so I mean, if I was Walmart, I would be talking about the inclusivity. I would be talking about the number of African Americans Walmart has encouraged to be in their workforce. I'd be talking about the diversity. I'd be talking about things like this as the brand. Because you see, this chakkar is all about discrimination, right? And as a brand, you need to show that you're not discriminatory. But the problem here is in America that unfortunately the person who's been elected has come on the roster because of his discriminatory rhetoric,
right?
right? So, I mean, as a brand, who are you aligning yourself up with? So, you have to see your commercial positioning according to the audience that you have.
Right,
ठीक है,
right,
तो
right.
you have to analyze कि audience क्या है उस एरिया में, उसके हिसाब से फिर उनको पोजीशन लेनी पड़ेगी.
तो अभी हम ब्रांड्स की हमने बात की अमेरिका में. ब्रांड्स का जो सिचुएशन अमेरिका में भी आजकल मुश्किल है. जाहिर है वहाँ पे कोविड भी चल रहा है. देयर इज द राइट्स दैट आर हैपनिंग. और पाकिस्तान में भी वी हैव अ सिमिलर सिचुएशन बिकॉज देयर इज लॉकडाउन, देयर इज ईजिंग ऑफ लॉकडाउन, पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट इज नॉट वर्किंग, एंड यू वर्क विद अ लॉट ऑफ ब्रांड्स, यू वर्क विद अ लॉट ऑफ द हाई एंड फैशन ब्रांड्स. यू बीन ऑन द पाकिस्तान फैशन काउंसिल एज देयर डिजिटल एक्सपर्ट एंड देयर स्ट्रेटजिस्ट. Do you think that these Pakistani brands, especially these high-end luxury retail brands, do you think they'll survive this crisis in Pakistan?
Actually, I think they will not only survive, but they will do quite well. And this was something I predicted and had predicted in a status as well when the COVID-19 crisis started, that when this thing opens up, people are going to see a rush to shop. Because let me explain something to you. The high-end couture brands and high-end fashion brands in altogether in the world don't cater to the masses. They cater to the elite 1 or 2%. Just like you can see that when they reopened the Hermes store in Guangzhou 1.5 months ago, I think the first day's sale was $2.7 million. ठीक है ना?
Wow,
So
I did not know that.
yeah, so there are two kinds of mentalities at work here. एक तो वो mentality होती है जो कहती है कि यार should I save now because I don't know what the future is like, so I shouldn't spend on high-end brands. और एक वो मेंटालिटी होती है कि यार मैं वो लहंगा जो मुझे पहनना था मैं खरीद ही लेती क्योंकि अब तो पता नहीं जिंदगी रहेगी या नहीं रहेगी. That other mentality is what is prevalent mostly in our elite classes, that I should have taken that ski trip because now I can't go to Aspen anymore.
Right.
Or I should have taken that vacation, or I should have bought that article because now I can't buy that article, not because I don't have the money to buy it, but because I don't have the access to buy it anymore.
Right.
So I think the second mentality is what will garner and what will drive the impetus to these brands doing well. And by the way, they're doing really well on e-commerce right now. The stores aren't open, but the e-commerce sales are going through the roof.
So what would you say? Like, I mean, the big brands, the store sales are down, e-commerce is going through the roof. But what about the small brands? The individual designer who built something in her house, does or operates out of her house, and we have a common friend who does that. I mean, they are being affected. People are uncomfortable coming to other people's houses. कि यार COVID, mask, 10 चीजें. ये लोग जो हैं छोटा बिजनेस ऑपरेट करते हैं, इनको what do they need to do right now to survive?
So Faizan, I mean, as a person who heads a digital company as well, that the future is for the small brand is all about digital anyways.
Right.
It's never, I mean, they're not at a time right now where they can afford a high-end store. Let's forget that mutual friend of ours, she can buy buildings. I mean, she must be working out of her house because of some other reason, but it's certainly not the lack of money or capital to buy something. But the thing is that smaller brands need to rely on digital, and they need to build the e-commerce portals and sell through that, sell through their Facebook marketplace, sell through their Instagram portal. That's what they should be concentrating on to keep their overheads low as a small brand in the first place, right? And now, the more so than ever, it's social distancing is going to be like a jack for e-commerce and has been proven to be. I mean, if you see the metrics, चाहे आप नेटफ्लिक्स के देखें, चाहे आप किसी और प्रोग्राम के देखें या किसी और प्लेटफॉर्म के देखें, they're all going through the roof because we don't have anything else to do right now.
That's true.
right? So I mean, everybody is consuming content online. So right now is the best time to actually launch a brand in the digital space.
But if that's the case, and if everyone's going to start doing this, the news is full of clutter. रोजाना कोई ना कोई इवेंट हो रहा होता है. साथ में अगर हर बंदा एक छोटी सी अपनी दुकान ऑनलाइन खोलने लगे, how do you sift through all of that clutter of content and information and messaging to get your message to resonate with your audience? I mean, you are the king of messaging, so to speak. So how would you create that message for, let's say,
the first thing that needs the brand needs to do is to engage in customer reviews. And I'm talking about honest, neutral customer reviews.
Unfortunately, right now, no one's really doing that on a proper commercial level in Pakistan. कोई नहीं कर रहा है.
यही तो मसला है पाकिस्तानी स्पेस, वेब स्पेस का, and this has been a problem in the Pakistani web space since the last 6 years when these things started getting attention कि कोई neutral reviews नहीं कर रहा.
लेकिन इसकी वजह क्या है? ये what have you studied this, looked at it? Why are people not giving reviews? Is it a language problem?
No, people are giving English में लिखते हैं. Okay, so Pakistanis as a nation aren't very what word should I use right now?
They're not good at giving feedback.
No, they're great at giving feedback. They don't want to give positive feedback.
They're not going to give positive feedback. Fair enough.
Okay, so they love tearing brands down. They love
if it sucks, they'll tell you. If it's great, they're not going to come back to you and tell you.
They're not going to come back because this is an education gap. America में क्या होता है? America में या किसी और, let's take America as an example because we both lived there. America में तूने GM की ट्रक खरीदी, ठीक है, तुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी उसकी ड्राइव, एवरीथिंग इज कूल, यू विल मेक इट अ पॉइंट to not just post about it online, you'll tell your friends about it, you'll go on the GM website and write a review about it because, hey, I bought this, it's got so much value and I'm a car buff and this is really cool. In Pakistan, the mentality is, yaar, ye mujhe sasti mil gayi hai, अच्छी चीज, ये बताई ना किसी को. ठीक है, so that's, but अगर उस ट्रक के स्टीयरिंग व्हील में कोई प्रॉब्लम निकल आया तो आपने कराची फूड डायरी पे, हालात अपडेट पे, आपने अपने सोशल मीडिया, देखिए प्रॉब्लम यहाँ पे क्या है, यहाँ पे एक प्रॉब्लम है, हमारे पहले ब्लॉगर मीटअप होते थे, उसमें बड़ी मैं ये डिस्कस करता था लोगों से कि खुदारा आप मूवी देखने जाएं तो आप मूवी क्रिटिक बन जाते हैं, ठीक है, आप खाना खाने जाएं रेस्टोरेंट में आप फूड क्रिटिक बन जाते हैं, ठीक है, आप कभी डायरेक्टर बन जाते हैं, कभी आप स्पेशल इफेक्ट्स गुरु बन जाते हैं, कभी आप मेडिसिनल गुरु बन जाते हैं. सो
और पॉलिटिकल एनालिस्ट की तो कमी ही नहीं है ना इस मुल्क में. तो
नहीं, वो तो खैर हमारा खानदानी पेशा है ना, वो तो कोई मसला ही नहीं है. We know everything. The problem in this country has always been, Faizan, that there are no verification and validation systems. Tomorrow, Faizan Syed can become anybody that he wants online without any validation or verification required. That is the problem in this country, which is why you will see all sorts of people giving tajziyas, not just on TV, but online. तो it's a free for all ना, मतलब लोग ऐसे नहीं हैं जो सिर्फ बैठ के अपने वीडियोस में पूरी दुनिया की लेते हैं तफरी. I mean,
तो अगर इसको हम अगर स्टैंडर्डाइज कर दें और एक रिव्यू मैकेनिज्म बना दें जहां पे वेरीफाइड रिव्यूज लोग ले सकें अपने प्रोडक्ट्स के हवाले से, यू थिंक
इट्स अ बिजनेस आइडिया, इट्स अ ग्रेट बिजनेस आइडिया.
तो ये इस तरह का मॉडल तो अमेरिका में येल्प, लेट्स से रेस्टोरेंट रिव्यूज था, मतलब
Abdur Rahman Rafiq started to create a portal called rava.pk which is all about Yelp. It was exactly like Yelp कि आप जाएं प्रोफेशनल रिव्यूज दें, but businesses would not sign on because they were scared, not because of the subscription fees. They were scared कि यार लोग बजाएंगे हमारी आके, because that is what our com is good at, right? We are a country of bajaus. We make the best memes, we make the best funny user generated content because हमें मजा आता है वो करने में. आप इंडियन साइड को देखो, Indians don't make memes like this. Like just the recent wedding that has taken place, तो मतलब 1500 मीम्स बन चुकी हैं उन दोनों पे, बेचारों पे, ठीक है, और उनकी लोग ऐसी की तैसी कर रहे हैं, हालांकि if you consider it's a निकाह यार, at the end of the day, right? तो वो अब, I mean, they've left nothing overturned, nothing under the sun, and they're making fun of it left, right, and center. So we are great at negativity, and we are great at pulling people down rather than, pulling them up.
So if we created basically a review system for online,
ये जो आप कर रहे हैं ना मेरे साथ, this is actually probably a first in Pakistan's social media history as well कि 2 comparative agencies के head बैठे हुए ऑनलाइन एक दूसरे से बात कर रहे हैं लाइव।
यार आई डोंट नो यहाँ पे इतना बड़ा इशू क्यों हो जाता है यार, कि मतलब हम सेम
हुआ
इंडस्ट्री
नहीं
से
अभी तक
बात नहीं कर सकते हैं।
ये हिस्ट्री है प्रधान।
कि एक
By the
एक
way, we were
इंडस्ट्री के
both,
दो
by the way,
लोग
both competitors when
कंस्ट्रक्टिव।
we compete as well when we both lost. So
सही बात है। तो
हाँ,
एक तो रिव्यूज का मॉडल हो गया, तो आपने रिव्यूज का एक पूरा बिजनेस बनाया एंड यू यूज द रिव्यूज टू हेल्प यू ड्राइव ट्रैफिक टू
yeah.
योर साइट, ठीक है ना, एंड देन यू गिव दैट कॉन्फर्मेशन। हाउ डू यू, तो ठीक है कस्टमर आ गया एंड दे सी के यार रिव्यूज अच्छे हैं, but how do you bring that customer to the site in the first place? How do you build the messaging to stand out from so much clutter? यार इतना content चल रहा है और हर तरह
Okay,
की चीजें चल रही हैं।
so there are two kinds of messaging, right? There's pull and there's push, right? Most of the brands here only do push. पोस्ट बनाया, लगाया, उसको बूस्ट किया, उसको प्लेस किया, उसके पीछे पैसे लगाए, पुश 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 पुश।
बिल्कुल सही है, ऐसे ही है।
फुल मैसेजिंग क्या होती है? 1+3 का आप मॉडल देखो, जब फोन इन्होंने निकाला था, bunch of geeks got together in college, they put up a post saying, hey, we want to create a phone, tell us what you want from it, right? They took all the attributes people gave them and created a geek phone, which is the 1+3 flagship. Now it's the 1+60 or whatever has come out new from that company. Huge success story, but that's how you build engagement. You make a pull happen. So customer के feedback से अगर आप product बनाएं या आप अपने कस्टमर को एक्चुअली इंगेज करें फीडबैक में, उनको कहेंगे look, I've launched this brand online, I'm putting up my first collection, give me honest feedback on it.
So what I was asking you, कि how do they get the messaging, right? Out of all that clutter, you were talking about push and pull messaging. You were talking about how the phone that is a 3-in-1 was created by customer feedback. I mean, यहाँ पे I don't think वो culture as such है कि यार customer से पहले feedback लें। ठीक है कुछ brands करते हैं, research and insights और strategy भी काफी काम होता है, और जो बड़े brands हैं वो सब करते हैं ये। लेकिन जो startup हैं, entrepreneurs हैं, how do they incorporate that feedback into what they're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, if this is a fashion designer that we're talking about, okay, maybe they can upload a few sample pieces and take feedback on how to better the collection,
Right.
how to make the collection better. You know, what would the customer require from the collection? A lot of new startup brands are taking feedback from the customers and designing stuff for like real women, plus size women, you know, different things. So, I mean, it is happening. It's not like it's not happening in Pakistan. The key point that we need to understand is engagement. Engagement करना जरूरी है for in order for pull to happen. उसके अलावा आपके पास कोई तरीका नहीं है unless you are a celebrity or a superstar जिसका एक generic एक pull होता है कि everybody wants to see what they've had for breakfast.
और ये एंगेजमेंट का तरीका लाने का क्या है? क्योंकि हमें पता है कि आपको भी पता है यार, यू नो, रनिंग एन एजेंसी, कि एंगेजमेंट इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट मेट्रिक। आप जितने भी रीच कर लें, अगर एंगेजमेंट नहीं मिली तो इसका मतलब लोगों ने आपके साथ रेजोनेट, योर कंटेंट इज नॉट रेजोनेटेड विद देम। सो हाउ डू यू गेट दैट एंगेजमेंट?
So one thing, what do Pakistanis love to do online? They love to give feedback.
Absolutely.
They love getting gifts, anything small.
Free
Right?
anything is always great.
Yeah. What else do they like to do? They like to tag their friends on something if they like it or unlike it. So I've just given you 3 activation campaigns to get engagement for your new brand.
So if you look at the 3 things you mentioned, they love free stuff, they love tagging people, and you talked about they love giving feedback. These 3 things we also saw in a recent wedding that took place, a nikah that you just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage if you're an individual, right, and you have a crisis like that happening that has taken social media by storm and it is after your person and your family? How do you manage through that, regardless of where you stand on it?
Okay, so, I mean, I'm going to speak about a brand. A person can be a brand as well. So that person that you're mentioning is, in fact, a brand. It's a big celebrity brand in Pakistan. Both of them are. So the first thing that you need to see is you need to analyze the situation very sort of neutrally and without getting any emotions involved. And obviously, the afflicted party cannot do that. So the crisis management or the PR team that's handling the crisis can get it analyzed or analyze it themselves from a very third party view. Then you need to realize what you've done, right? I mean, most people and brands make the mistake of uploading stuff which should not have been uploaded, or saying something which should not have been said in this crisis, or
Correct.
doing something which they can look at it in hindsight and say कि यार ये मैं नहीं करता या नहीं करती तो ये सब नहीं होता. ठीक है? So that's a realization that needs to come in where they look, they sit back and they need to realize कि गलत क्या हुआ है. Yeah. And now when you're realizing something, you need to realize it from the national sentiment. Another problem that we have in Pakistan with brands and people is that they are quite entitled. So they seem to come to the conclusion every time. Let's not talk about the individuals because I know both of them, you know both of them as well. Let's talk about a movie theater. So a person goes into the movie theater, he doesn't like the service, he doesn't like the popcorn, or there's somebody sitting next to him who's flirting with him, which he doesn't like, or she doesn't like. Okay? And they make a complaint about it online. Now the typical behavior of a brand is, ये तो हर जगह होता है.
ऐसे ही है बिल्कुल.
ये तो आप बाहर मूवी थिएटर में जाएं तो भी होगा आपके साथ. These are the typical responses that a brand gives in Pakistan, without realizing कि भाई एक aggrieved party है. The best thing to do right now is to realize your mistake, say sorry, and move on. That's okay. So I'll give you another example. When the KSC Twitter service was being set up, right? And this was a game changer at that time. So when the KSC Twitter service was being set up, a lot of us were asked as consultants, again, feedback on how should they do the customer service desk on Twitter. I was one of the people asked because I was on the first 50 people on Twitter, so I know a lot about Twitter. The moment they started answering people, मेरे एरिया में लाइट चली गई है यार, क्या होने वाला है आप बताएं. And the KSC desk will answer, sir, the light has been going down because of maintenance and it will be restored at 9 o'clock today. Khatam. End of problem. Half of the customer satisfaction was derived from just them answering the aggrieved party.
Because for years they wouldn't answer. For years you would call them, the numbers would be off. I mean, KSC
Even now, Faizan,
I remember when I heard about it, I was like, क्या करेंगे कि ट्विटर पे इतने सारे messages inbox में बैठे होंगे, कोई जवाब तो देगा नहीं. And then when I saw what they were doing with it, I was amazed. Yeah, brilliant.
So you see, so you were amazed, right? I mean, now see, the thing is that most brands here still don't reply. बोलने दो, तो बोलते हैं ना, वो मैसेजेस का रिप्लाई करते हैं ना वो, and I mean they don't want to engage.
यार जो फोन, I'm sorry, वो ये तो I think it's an extension of our national behavior. जो कौम फोन नहीं उठाती है, नेशनल पास टाइम में ये भी आप शामिल कर दें कि फोन ना उठाना. अरे भाई, कोई आपसे राब्ता कर रहा है, कोई वजह होगी, आपने पेमेंट नहीं दी उनको, वो आपसे रिमाइंडर के लिए भाई बता दें यार मेरे पास पैसे नहीं है, 1 महीने बाद फोन करो. भाई आप जवाब ही नहीं दे रहे.
So I've been told as the CEO of a PR agency that आप बहुत जल्दी फोन उठा लेते हैं. लोग समझेंगे आपके पास कुछ काम नहीं है
ना. एग्जैक्टली, कि आप फोन जल्दी उठाते हैं, उसके मतलब है कि आप वेले हैं, कुछ है ही नहीं करने को. अरे नहीं भाई, that's part of the MO. यार, you got to respond.
The fact that a person, so the fact that a person in a position is responding to you quickly is taken as a negative in this country.
That he doesn't have anything to do. If he's answering my call, he has nothing to do. But if he doesn't answer my call, what an ass. How dare he not answer my call?
So sometimes,
I think there is a number of rings you need to let happen, where then if you answer it, it's fine. I think maybe we should pronounce that, after 2 rings, you should answer your phone.
अच्छा, तो बाहर क्या होता है, मैं तो पहले दूसरे रिंग पे उठा लेता था. So people would be like, यार आपके पास काम नहीं है. Then I would send my company's profile. We're managing about 35 brands and X number of celebrities. And then they'd be like, oh, really? Like, yeah, that's how we operate, because we respond to our customers. Because you see, if there's a crisis, we're talking about a crisis here. If there's a crisis and you have on the other end a PR person who does not respond for 12 hours, you're screwed, man. I mean, 12 hours में तो यहाँ पे सब कुछ हो जाएगा. So you have to take a decision.
So the first thing you have to do is the respond to people, right? You have to just get back to them, hear them out, and actually just give them an answer.
Yeah. And you need to understand that in a country which has about, how many news channels do we have? You would know this more than I.
We had more than 100 licenses. We had at least 30 news channels. On air.
So let's say we have 30 news channels, national news channels. Okay, so we're addicted to the news. The news is a form of entertainment here. So what you need to realize as a brand is that, okay, you've done something which created or triggered something, good or bad. Now there's a news cycle that's going to run on it. If you decide not engage with that news cycle and put out a constructive statement, that news cycle will finish. Inherently in Pakistan, it always does finish because there's so much shit happening.
Exactly.
That the next news cycle has to take over.
Exactly.
What people tend to do here is that they tend to feed into the news cycle. और पहला रिएक्शन ब्रांड का या पर्सन का ये आता है कि मुझे कैसे कुछ कहा भाई, मुझे
तो वो पूरा दिन ही 24 घंटे जो साइकिल का है वो शॉक में गुजर जाता है.
हाँ कि मुझे 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 बोला, मेरे ऊपर बीम बनाई, हाउ डेयर दे, मैं अभी वीडियो बना के लगाता हूँ और फिर वो दूसरा न्यूज साइकिल स्टार्ट करता है वीडियो.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल ऐसा ही है. तो यहाँ पे जो लोगों को एक समझ आई थिंक आनी चाहिए, जो न्यूज साइकिल का कॉन्सेप्ट है ना, कि एक दफा न्यूज ट्रिगर हो गई, it will eventually fade 48 to 72 hours.
In a country like America, it won't fade because they have so much time to discuss stuff.
Exactly.
यहाँ तो daily कुछ हो रहा है.
Exactly.
Daily कुछ chaotic हो रहा है.
So उसका you're saying the right way to approach it is to get your side of the narrative out there.
First analyze the situation, then realize what you've done, then respond to it according to your audience. These are the three things I would advise anybody to do. And be calm and let the person who's doing your PR take the decision. If you would have been able to take a decision in the first place, this would not have happened.
So you talk about good PR here and three of the ways that you can actually sort of exercise good PR. Give me an example. In a crisis. So give me an example of a good crisis management that took place in Pakistan in recent memory. That really sort of sat with you and said, yo, wow, yeah, these guys really did a great job here.
Okay. So I think the way that बीच में एक Generations का या I think किसी brand का ad आया था, I forget the name of the brand, I think it was Generations. उससे let's talk about another example. Sana Safinaz का एक ad था जिसमें African American individual was part of that ad. A lot of people took that as very racist, discriminatory, and wrote a lot about it. They waited and they released a statement with facts which talked about the fact that how much they contributed to the economy of the place by doing that campaign there. Then all of those people involved in that campaign did it voluntarily. They were not random villagers that was snapped while the campaign was happening. How they took part in that campaign, and their testimonials of them taking part in that campaign, and the fact that they were pretty okay with it was, I think, a very good PR move on their part. Now, I'm still not saying that that campaign was right. I'm talking about how the PR was handled.
So that just the fact that it was handled well made a campaign that may or may not have been okay in a sense. And it
diffused the situation. Because the situation was diffused.
And not only that, it actually extended the campaign in itself, because there was the campaign, plus there was the talkability around this situation, and then the handling of the situation, which is all.
As a publicist, the first thing you must know if you study international PR and how publicists operate, there is no such thing as bad PR, right? So sometimes when a brand messes up, that could be the most viral moment in that brand's lifetime. Because at that point, everybody in Pakistan is listening to that brand. So what the brand says next really matters as an impact. So the best publicist will take a really bad situation, rather than take it as a challenge, take it as an opportunity to turn it around.
So
right? I'll give you another example.
Yeah,
the whole Ali Zafar, Ali Azmat thing, right? Ali Azmat went on TV and went on to make a few statements about कि हमारे एक fellow singer हैं, ये है, वो है, alluded to him. And what did Ali do the next day? Ali made a video saying, हाँ सब मैंने ही किया है, ठीक है, सारा मैंने ही किया है, आपकी गली में बिल्ली मर गई है, वो भी मैं उसकी जिम्मेदार हूँ, ठीक है, कोई भी चीज हुई है वो मेरी जिम्मेदारी है, मैं मुल्क खरीद लेता हूँ, मैं ब्लॉगर्स खरीद लेता हूँ, मैं सब कर लेता हूँ, बल्कि आपको कोई कंट्री गिरानी हो तो आप मेरे से बात करें, हमको मैंने बनाया है, एक काम करें, आप एक टारगेट लगाएं अपने रूम में, उस पर रोज जो है ना मेरे नाम की तस्वीर के साथ टारगेट लगाएं और रोज उस पर जो है ना वो डांट्स मारा करें क्योंकि भाई हाजिर है, भाई का ही कसूर है सारा. दैट भाई हाजिर है became such a viral movement that more than 1,000 people sent in videos, because the next video that he made in was कि मैं अब आवाम की उस फरमाइश पे गाना बना रहा हूँ, जो मेला लूट लिया, और आप वीडियोस भेजें. क्योंकि मेरे पास अभी प्रोडक्शन नहीं कर सकता मैं, बिकॉज कोविड है या जो भी है. आप वीडियोस भेजें कि मैं उसमें उसको पीएच टुगेदर करके एक वीडियो बनाऊंगा इस गाने का. सो he received more than 1,000 videos because everybody was watching him because he went viral. And then Mela Loot Liya went viral and has 8+ million views, dude.
Wow.
In like a month.
So this one opportunity earned him so much publicity, and not only that, generated revenue for him.
Yeah. So this is a viral moment which was used, a challenge which was used to create opportunity. So this is something that brands need to learn from. Now the problem is that not every brand is accepting of this also, ना, because हमारे यहाँ पे फिर वही मेंटालिटी है कि हम वो बात करते हैं कि मुझे क्यों बोला, मुझे क्यों ललकारा. मतलब हम किसी कस्टमर की कंप्लेंट को ब्रांड्स यहाँ पे इस तरह लेते हैं कि मुझे ललकारा क्यों, तो वो इंटाइटलमेंट है. So I think what social media reacts to the most positively is humility. They react to humility. They react to humbleness. They react to ground realities, and they react to के आप अपनी situation explain कर दें and then just let it be.
So if you take this exact point you mentioned, humility, you give feedback to the customer, you're there for them. I mean, I'm going to switch gears on a little bit more of a sensitive issue and a crisis, was the PIA related crisis. And I ask you because you handled PIA for 3 or 4 years over the last, I'd say, last 3-4 years.
Our company handled the...
So your company handled PIA and their PR overall, and you guys went through a crisis. And there's a second crisis that happened.
We went through several crises.
Well,
remember the brand we're talking about here. So there was a crisis almost every week.
So there's a blunder at PIA almost on a daily basis. So A, how do you manage that? And B, when something this big happens that affects lives and families, that is such a national disaster. I mean, how do you recover from that as a brand? And what do you do as a brand strategist for PR?
So, I mean, I'm going to talk in general because obviously there's lots of stuff that I cannot talk about. So in general, if something like a national tragedy like this happens and your brand is involved, okay, in this case, the brand being the transport partner, okay, in this tragedy, what you need to do is first and foremost, if you look at the history of air crashes and tragedies that have happened like this, and they've happened with pretty much every airline, which does not, I'm not meaning to say there's any less of a tragedy. What you need to do first is to release accurate information to the families of the bereaved. The first thing that you need to do is release on-point, very accurate information and create specialist customer service portals for them to get them through this crisis. Okay, so a portal could have been created or a desk could have been created immediately on identifying your family, right?
And that wasn't done in any of the cases that they experienced. I'm talking specifically about PIA here.
Not to my knowledge, Pakistan में इस तरह reaction नहीं लेते लोग, ठीक है? तो I think पहली चीज वो होनी चाहिए कि customer response of something like this that happens. पहले तो आपको information जो circulate करनी चाहिए, वो private होनी चाहिए, should only be circulated to the families of the people on that flight.
लेकिन ये भी तो यहाँ पे है ना, मैनिफेस्ट निकल आती हैं, फ्लाइट लिस्टें निकल आती हैं, हर चीज निकल. How do you contain that? How do you contain it?
How do you contain it is that you need to have a proper crisis protocol in place in your organization, and especially an organization as big as the one that you mentioned, where something like this takes place. Okay, now my cat is now coming into the picture.
Your cat's very interested in your PR services.
So I guess he is. Right, just hold on a second.
What's your cat's name?
His name is Bigglesworth.
Mr. Bigglesworth. Enjoying his evening.
Mr. Bigglesworth is enjoying his evening, and now he's settled himself right next to me over here. Acha ji, so where are we? 8 minutes.
So you talked about they need to set up information flow that is completely private. You talked about setting up a portal to give accurate and timely information.
Yes.
What else
And
could they
and the
find?
fact that after that information has been given to the audience, you need to also then talk about compensation. Okay, what kind of compensation can you provide to the bereaved families? How can you help them out as a national carrier or an airline? And PIA did some of that to their credit. I mean, they flew a lot of people in from Lahore and so. But I think that doing everything that you're doing is not enough if it's not even put out there on the PR stream, right? So you need to tell people what you're doing also.
So you were talking about accurate and timely information, creating a
Okay.
portal, take it for a
Yeah.
company that big, and then obviously facilitating the aggrieved individuals, whether through compensation, whether through support in their family members or whoever's been affected.
So if something like this happens, I mean, you have to imagine what you would be going through if you were in that place, right? So if something like that has happened, then you need to act according to, like I said, your audience. So what will your audience be feeling right now? What will they be going through right now? So you use everything at your disposal to make them feel comfortable, to let them have their individuals identified, to help them grieve, to arrange things for them, to facilitate them in any way possible. Because look, honestly speaking, as far as we keep flying, the crashes will keep on happening, right? ये कोई ऐसी चीज तो नहीं है कि आप you
प्रिवेंट
can
नहीं कर सकते, ये तो होगा.
ये तो होता है. तो I mean, having said that, when something like this happens, you need to have proper crisis protocols in place, which need to be exercised and go through your organization, and every member of your organization needs to obey those crisis protocols. ये नहीं हो सकता कि फला ने ये लीक कर दिया तो फला ने ये बोल दिया तो फला ने ये कर दिया. That is why in our line of business, as you know very well, information needs to be in the hands of the few rather than the many.
That's true. And that's the most difficult part of information handling. क्योंकि सबसे पहले information, चाहे आपकी फ्लाइट मैनिफेस्टो हो, किसी का CNIC हो, बीच में तो अभी कोविड के जो केसेस थे उसकी एक पूरी लिस्ट निकल आई थी कि कौन कौन कोविड पॉजिटिव है, एज इफ कि यार ये कोई बड़ी टैबू किस्म का इशू है. यार इट्स अ फ्लू, सबको होगा. एंड 99% ऑफ द पीपल, चलो 95% ऑफ द पीपल विल डेफिनेटली बी ओके. लेकिन ये इंफॉर्मेशन यहाँ पे तो रहती नहीं है ना किसी लोगों के पास.
हाँ, अच्छा, हमें प्रॉब्लम थोड़ा सा ये भी है कि हम वेरीफाई करना शुरू कर देते हैं ना हर चीज को. लाइक दिस कोविड पेशेंट्स, हमने वेरीफाई करना शुरू कर दिया इनको कि यार ओ माय गॉड इसको तो कोविड हो गया है.
और इसमें प्रॉब्लम ये होती है कि लोग फिर खुद परेशान होते हैं कि मैं बताऊं ना बताऊं, एज इफ इट्स अ नेगेटिव थिंग. अरे कुछ नहीं है, इट्स अ फ्लू है. हाँ, थोड़ा जरा सख्त फ्लू है, और वो ऐसा फ्लू है कि अगर
look, it's खतरनाक, it's a pandemic, we have to recognize that.
बिल्कुल है.
But just because you have it, that doesn't mean that people should turn you into a villain. मतलब literally over here, people who had come back from England were turned into villains, and things were said about them like, oh my god, ये तो पार्टी कर रहे थे सारे साथ. तो
हाँ, सबने इन्होंने ऐसी पार्टी की और सबको कोविड दे दिया उस पार्टी पे. अगर कोविड था तो बताया क्यों नहीं? अरे भाई, कौन सोच रहा होता है ऐसे कि यार नहीं मुझे कोविड है, चलो जी मैं अब सबको बुलाता हूँ और इसमें दावत करके सबको दे देता हूँ.
अच्छा, तो आई मीन एक ऐसे इंडिविजुअल को मैंने साइट पे क्वेश्चन किया. मैं बोला आपको अंदाजा है कि ये लोग हर वीकेंड ऐसे पार्टी करते हैं? मतलब दिस इज नॉट and it wasn't even a party. That also came out later that it was a barbecue at somebody's house here. I mean,
खबर पे
हाँ, तो दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम अगेन. वो हम वेरीफाई करना शुरू कर देते हैं ना हर चीज को. हम इंटाइटल्ड भी बहुत हैं, एवरीथिंग गोज अगेंस्ट आवर नेशनल गैरत, और हम वेरीफाई भी बहुत जल्दी करना शुरू कर देते हैं हर एक को. ठीक है ना? तो अभी किसी को कोविड होता है तो सबसे पहले तो जो है ना उसके दोस्त जो है ना आपस में बात करना शुरू कर देते हैं. अबे यार मैं तो मिला था इससे, अबे यार अब क्या होगा यार, मरवा दिया इसने यार, मरवा. अच्छा, ये नहीं सोच रहे मेरे दोस्त को कोविड हो गया है. That guy can die, right? He's in a very life-threatening situation right now.
नहीं, वो तो फौरन आपसे ब्लेम करेंगे यार. मैं तो उस दिन उसके घर के सामने से गुजरा था, देखो यार उसने क्या कर दिया मेरा.
बजाय उसको सपोर्ट करें, बजाय कम्युनिटी कम्स फॉरवर्ड टू सपोर्ट हिम, टू रैली अराउंड हिम कि नहीं यार कुछ नहीं होगा तुझे, हम हैं. Even at 6 feet away, you can still go and meet a COVID person as well. ये थोड़ी है कि मतलब आपने शुरू कर दी कि ओ मैंने उसका वाईफाई यूज किया था, मुझे तो कोविड नहीं होता है. So I mean, people say and do things like this over here, and
ये
I mean,
इसमें इट्स सो चैलेंजिंग यार. मतलब इतने वेरिएबल्स हैं हमारी सोसाइटी के, इतने नुआंसेस हैं. आई मीन, एंड इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू हैंडल ए rapidly moving news cycle, people's desire to jump into everything, all sorts of nuances in our society. What would you say to someone who finds this exciting and is thinking, yeah, you know what, I still want a career in PR management and crisis management and all of that? What would you say to that individual who's stepping into that right now? How do you think they should think about the foundation of their career?
So I actually think it's very exciting. I actually think it's a very fun thing.
Never a dull moment.
Huh?
Never a dull moment in PR.
Never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. And I think it's a very exciting thing to take something like a challenge and turn it into an opportunity to see that happening in front of you. ठीक है? And फिर जब वो खालिद अलवी ग्रुप पे बात होती है कि यार ये कैसे हुआ, तो आप पीछे बैठ के स्माइल कर रहे होते हैं कि मुझे पता है
आप
कैसे
मिस्टर बिगलसवर्थ को पेट कर रहे होते हैं ऐसे, और ऐसे स्माइल कर रहे होते हैं
Yeah, I'm
ऐसे.
not talking about myself. I'm talking about it as a career thing. So, I mean, I think that it's a great career to be in. Some of the qualities that you should have if you're wanting to come into this career is number one, you should be a fantastic writer, and a writer who can produce things under pressure, right? Because a PR crisis situation that we're talking about here will always be a very pressurized situation. So producing the right words under pressure is a key requirement. Having the nuance of things is a key requirement. कि आपको नेशनल सेंटिमेंट के ऊपर पल्स पे फिंगर हो आपकी. ये नहीं कि आप अपने लाला लैंड में बैठे हुए हैं और आपने बोला यार क्या हो गया यार, ये बोल दे, क्या मसला है, ये इस तरह नहीं होता. ठीक है. Number 3, obviously you have to be a person who can deal with pressure, and that's not a joke, because the news cycle and the country that you're talking about, when the pressure comes now, it is relentless.
Right.
So I mean, I'll give you another situation where I was also doing the PR of the Karachi Binale when that incident happened.
That was a big incident too, yes.
Okay. And when that incident happened, everybody and anybody's uncle in authority in the city started calling us up.
Right.
So you have to have the calmness to deal with that situation as well. You know, because if you, obviously, I mean, if a situation like that arrives, you have to take some very strong and sometimes very brutal decisions. Okay? But sometimes you have to take those decisions to diffuse the matter at hand. You have to be able to look at the bigger picture. That's also a very strong criteria. And you have to be able to follow a chain of command. As a person working in a PR agency, you have to follow a chain of command. तो अगर आप कोई क्राइसिस सिचुएशन से गुजर रहे हैं, तो you have to understand how to keep mum about it and how to keep compartmentalizing your personal life from your publicist life. ये नहीं कि आपने WhatsApp पे अपने दोस्तों को बताना शुरू कर दिया कि बाबू कल का ये प्लान है, तू देखी, मुझे सब पहले से पता है क्या होने वाला है.
प्रॉब्ली यही होता होगा, तभी तो सारी इंफॉर्मेशन पहले होती है मार्केट में बाहर.
हाँ. So, I mean, you see, leverage is something that people don't understand here. And leverage is something which is always born out of discreteness.
That's
it
true.
It is never created in an open space. ठीक है ना. तो leverage आपके अगर किसी चीज को या ब्रांड को आपको लेनी है, तो you cannot talk about it with everybody. This is actually not just from the agency side, but the client side as well. The client also needs to have a crisis protocol set in place कि अगर ये होगा तो मैं इन लोगों से बात करूंगा. ये नहीं कि मैं 25 दोस्तों को फोन करूंगा और उसके बाद मैं वीडियो लगा दूंगा.
जो कि होता है एक्चुअली.
हाँ, और वो भी अनस्क्रिप्टेड वीडियो,
भी अनस्क्रिप्टेड
जिसके बीच में जो मेरा मूड हो रहा है मैं कह रहा हूँ. So I mean,
यहाँ पे जो बात आपने स्क्रिप्टिंग की है ना यार, ये बड़ी अहम बात है कि the written word. A lot of people ask me still.
What did I say? What is the first quality that they need?
Exactly. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people ask us, I want to be a blogger, influencer, I want to be in PR and all of that. If you have mastery over the written word, even till today, the best and most important news is the news that is written, whether it is written on a website or whether it is written on a physical paper. A physical paper.
So
To
a
me,
lot of
it's
people
still the
will
most
come and tell
important.
me, a lot of people will come and tell me कि यार आजकल तो फैसल सारे विजुअल का गेम है. No, sir, it's not. To me, the written word still is the most powerful thing in this space. Because remember, your statement, your press release is always going to be written. It's not going to be a picture.
And not only that, it is written, and it is once it is written and it is out there, it's out there forever. It can be searched, it can be quoted, it can be referenced. It
What's
is a
written
piece.
cannot be unwritten, right?
Exactly. Versus a video, if you're part of a video statement, it's very difficult to sift through video. You can't like go into a video without an editor, cut it out, and then quote the
Also,
video.
also videos and pictures can be manipulated.
So can word.
Text,
But text is
no,
harder to manipulate.
text is hard to manipulate once you've released a statement, na?
That's true.
But people can release a video and then say later on, oh, ये तो जो है आपने जो लगाया है, certain parts edit करके लगाया है, और मतलब all sorts of deflection can take place. But
That's
the
true.
written word is the written word. Once you've released that, फिर उसको challenge किया जा सकता है, मगर उसको change करना बहुत मुश्किल है, because you can just hold up your statement and say कि this is what I said.
So then where does that put all of these Insta bloggers who've popped up with 3,000, 5,000, 1,000 followers, who are putting out all of this video focused content, calling themselves bloggers, and trying to sort of amplify messages on behalf of brands? I mean, do you have some piece of advice for them if they really are serious about playing that bloggers in that space? Because you have been a blogger, you still are.
No, no, I
Right?
am. So I started out by blogging. So the first thing that they need to understand is that um, this is not blogging. Blogging is actually long form में writing an opinion piece or a review or something like that in on your website or on your blog. ठीक है? Instagrammers are different. Bloggers are different. Bloggers are the long form. Micro bloggers are something which you can consider Twitter to be. You can be a Twitterati. You can be a micro blogger. So these are different fields. Now, first you need to decide which field you belong to. If you're an Instagrammer with 3,000 followers and you're calling yourself a blogger, that by itself tells me as an agency head, you don't know about what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about because आप अपनी फील्ड को ही पहले नहीं recognize कर चुके हैं कि है क्या भाई. So you need to first differentiate between that. If you're an Instagrammer, call yourself an Instagrammer. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are a Twitterati, call yourself a microblogger or a Twitterati. If you are engaged in long form blogging, then call yourself that. Then you're a blogger. If you do content writing for a company, then you're a copywriter. These are all different fields. आप इनको एक दूसरे से मिक्स करके हर जगह पे शो अप होके मतलब वी गेट रिक्वेस्ट लाइक मैंने ये ब्लॉग बनाया है, उसके इतने फॉलोअर हैं, प्लीज साइन मी अप टू योर नेक्स्ट पीआर कैंपेन. अरे भाई, आपके डेमोग्राफिक्स क्या हैं, आपकी ऑडियंस सेगमेंटेशन क्या है, आपने किन ब्रांड्स के साथ काम किया है, व्हाट इज योर कन्वर्जन रेट. कन्वर्जन का तो सब दूर दूर तक कुछ तस्करा ही नहीं है. ठीक है ना? ठीक है.
That is a topic. That is a whole other topic that you'll get me excited about that I'm going to talk about.
तो मैं जब किसी से पूछता हूँ ना कि आपकी कन्वर्जन रेट क्या है, तो आगे से बोलते हैं ये क्या होता है. मेरे फॉलोअर इतने फॉलोअर है मेरे. अच्छा भाई, आपके फॉलोअर हैं, अच्छी बात है, आपकी एंगेजमेंट भी अच्छी है, रीच भी अच्छी है. If I give you a shoe brand to do a campaign with, have you ever done a campaign with a shoe brand where X amount of people have bought that shoe based on your post? That's conversion.
That is the way you need to do it. That's what you can do with digital. That's the power of digital.
That's the power of digital. And we don't need to take the example of America and countries that advanced. Even in the Middle East, I've met people who are influencers who will say do a store raid, okay, on Snapchat, and they will charge you something like 8 to 10,000 dirhams to do it. But you know what happens? They might not have more than 5,000 followers, but the moment they enter the store and they start doing Snapchat on that store and what's contained in that store, a few hours later, people will start coming in, showing their Snapchat pictures. I want to see what this is. That, sir, is conversion.
And it doesn't matter how big your audience is, because as long as you drive conversion, at the end of the day, that's the name of the game.
So
Engagement and then conversion.
So what what do I tell fashion brands, right? I tell fashion brands, you need only 300 followers. If you can convince 300 women to come to an exhibition and buy stuff based on your post, that's all you need. Because you
That,
know what? Any exhibition in Pakistan will have a maximum of 150 to 200 pieces from a designer. So if you
that's
can convince
very
300
good.
women, if you can
And what
convince
you've
300
done,
women,
and
you're
what you've
done.
done is you've sold out everything and created a wait list of 100 pieces that
Yes,
everyone's clamoring to get their hands on.
absolutely.
And
With only
scarcity,
300.
and we know what scarcity does to demand and popularity.
FOMO.
Exactly. This has been great. This has been great, Faisal. I think we had a very good time. I know there were two interruptions, and that's fine. But thanks a lot, man. This was
No, not
fun.
at all.
We're gonna take snippets of this. I'm gonna share those with you. You can share them in your networks, and then we're gonna put the entire video up, on YouTube. And for those of you watching, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, East River, where there's more videos like this on different topics. Faisal, you have been super. Thanks a lot. Check out his website for MindMap Communications. And if you ever need the right kind of crisis management, Faisal's your guy. All right, buddy.
And Faizan, let's put out a message at the end of this also that, even though we are all working in the same field and competing with one another, we can talk to one another and share insights and learn. Everybody learns.
That
Even
is
after 9 years, I learn everything. I mean, I learn a lot of stuff every single day. So I mean, you can learn while talking to each other. तो ये अपने अपने silos में please बैठना बंद कर दें और इतनी in depth discussion हमारी हुई है अभी digital पे and I'm quite sure कि फैजान ने मेरे कोई secrets नहीं चुरा लिए होंगे इससे ठीक है और I mean you need to understand and you need to have an open heart because हम सब साथ हैं इस industry में और हम साथ काम करेंगे और बात करेंगे तो सीखेंगे.
बिल्कुल ऐसे ही है, और हमें मिल के चलना चाहिए. मिल के चलेंगे तो ये इंडस्ट्री स्ट्रांग होगी. और मैं
Yeah.
अभी इसी वजह से मैं सबको ओपन इनविटेशन देता हूँ. एनीवन इन द डिजिटल इंडस्ट्री स्पेस who's willing to come on, maybe have a chat like this, maybe we can create a group in which we can share ideas. I'm open and I'm happy to take the lead in creating that, because I think when ideas are shared, industries evolve, the quality of service evolves, and then brands and customers overall become satisfied. So I think that we should take that on as a overall group, being in the same space. But again,
All right. Thanks a lot for having me here. Thank
cheers,
you.
buddy. Thanks a lot. Take
All right.
care.
Bye.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye bye.